Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Hey, hope you're doing well, hope you're having a fab weekend. I'm here with a very unusual video for this channel in that it is very relevant, it is as topical as a prescribed treatment for crabs. I'm talking about the news that not only are we getting a Scream VII, but it is going to have a new director in Christopher Landon. So I'm here to give you a quick take on that because Scream is a series I'm kind of invested in. I've got my ups and downs with it, but I have watched it a crazy number of times, and so I care about it quite a lot. And to give you a little bit of background to this, if you don't know already, Scream kind of restarted in 2022 with Scream V, which was released just as Scream. It was kind of a trend at the time to do your late in the franchise sequel that had the exact same name as the beginner. Think Candyman, think Halloween. Actually, that's kind of all of them as far as I know, but that's enough. That's 3 points. That is a trend. That is a trend. I'm a statistician by training. I can assure you that counts. And Scream 2022, Scream V, I really liked. I've seen it about 5 times. I bought a physical copy of it, which I almost never do. And therefore, I was quite pleased with it when I went into Scream VI. And Scream VI, kind of a disaster. If you want my full thoughts on it, I did a reaction stream, which you can watch here. That's about 90 minutes of my take in spoiler-free and then spoilerific version, all the gory details, and you can watch that if you want. But in short, I think I was probably too kind on it in that stream. I would be a lot harsher now. There were some major flaws in Scream VI that were effectively, I would summarise up as going with whatever the studio wants in terms of following the current thing that is giving you a very diverse and very preachy cast, and also very worryingly moving away from believability, making the series less grounded. Those were things I didn't like, and also I should point out, not really having anything to say. Those were the things that worried me most about Scream VI. And so the news that the production team behind it, Team Radio Silence, so led by Matt Bettinelli, Alpin and Tyler Gillett, they are, I might have messed that up. I'm going to put that on screen in case I got that wrong, which I probably didn't. Team Radio Silence, they're going to be producing Scream VII, but they are stepping away from directing duties. That is not typically a good sign. You know, they followed up Scream V because it was a big success, and for them to sort of dip away after Scream VI, I don't think it bears well, and it's probably a bit of a sign, it doesn't bode well. I think it's probably a bit of a sign from them that they know Scream VI was not good. I will give them some leniency because just as with Scream 2, they had to get it out in a year, and that gives you a heck of a lot of pressure, which is also being brought to bear on Christopher Landon here, so that also does not look good for Scream VII. So onto the specifics of Christopher Landon and what it means for Scream VII, what it forebodes. His background is kind of interesting. He has mostly done franchise work, so all this work on the Paranormal Activity series. I don't really count this against him, it's not really a problem. Loads of directors who are fantastic have sort of taken these franchise development jobs just to get their foot in the door and do some work. Good examples of this would be obviously Mike Flanagan, or for a classic example, James Cameron with Piranha 2. So it's not really against Christopher Landon that he's done this work, but it does make me think that doing so many of them, he's probably inclined to be a studio guy and to lean more into what they might suggest, rather than doing a more risky vision, which is the kind of thing I would like to see in Scream VII, given the issues in Scream VI, which were following the current trends, if you get me. Now, I do want to stress that doing this kind of studio work, it is not automatically foreboding, it is not a bad sign guaranteed, but it is more likely to be a bad sign. There are exceptions, obviously. We can point to someone like Christopher Smith, who has done a lot of typical genre work, but was able to, whilst producing standard genre features following a trend, was able to imbue them with a lot of creativity, a lot of extra effort, and to make them very special films. Christopher Smith is the kind of guy who is able to take those basic by the numbers plot lines and then really elevate them with his attention to detail and character. Creep and Severance, perfect examples of that. And then following the success of those, he was able to make something original, his standout film Triangle, which I would absolutely urge you to watch. So if we can have a Christopher Smith, Christopher Landon could be that guy, and there is some evidence of that. But also counter evidence. It's a mixed bag. I'm talking about the Happy Death Day series. Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. An atrocious piece of crap that I struggle to watch through. The complexity is that Christopher Landon wrote both. Happy Death Day, and I should point out he's not credited as a writer on that, but he did write it, as well as directing it. Happy Death Day is probably the best film of its year. It was incredibly strong. It had a wonderful vision. It had a lot of creativity. It was concise. It was well directed, atmospheric, great cast. And it also had a really strong moral backbone to it, a really strong vision that I found actually really quite moral and inspiring. And to see that in a Hollywood movie, something that positive, I was chuffed. But Happy Death Day to You, the sequel, which I will point out wasn't actually all that rushed out, is awful. And it's awful in the way that I worry Scream VII is going to be. That is, it followed the trends. So you got a massive increase in reliance on comedy. You got an unnecessary kind of swerve towards focus on diversity in the cast. It just became a lot less grounded, and you were aware of studio machinations at play, twisting the film into something that they thought would be more sellable. It was barely the same genre as the first excellent film, and that is what I'm worried he will bring to Scream VII. I worry very much that Christopher Landon is going to end up bringing that extra reliance on comedy to it, and that already happened in Scream VI, and in my mind it weakened it. It tried to make it a bit cheaper by going for those laughs and effectively telling you, don't take this seriously. And when you're telling the audience don't take it seriously, your horror film gets less horrific. Trying to do that comedy horror balance is incredibly fraught. It's very hard to do. I worry he's being brought on to do what he did with Happy Death Day for You, to follow studio instructions and lean into comedy, also to lean less into believability, less into groundedness, and just kind of go for big moments. Go for big impact that you can put in a trailer that might make a good meme, that might get some traction on TikTok, and not really have any regard to whether it makes sense. We saw this massively in Scream VI in the revelation about the killers. I will not ruin that for you now, but the revelation of the killers and their motivation in Scream VI is one of the worst things about the movie. It is a jumping the shark moment. It is terrible. My worry is that Scream VII will push for that, and also that it's going to move it consequently more in the direction of Scream 3. There's been a bit of a trend in this rebooted Scream series in that 5 was very close to Scream. It was consciously trying to redo a lot of it and reference the original closely. Scream 6 was a lot closer to Scream 2 in that you had a change of location away from Woodsboro. You had a showdown finale in a theatre and a criticism of franchises, with the complexity that Scream 6 was terrible. I mean, Scream 2 wasn't especially strong, I'll throw that in there, but if this trend continues and Scream 7 is sticking closely to Scream 3, you're going to have something incredibly divisive. Scream 3 is famous for splitting the fandom. It goes very camp, it breaks away from reality a lot, it's a lot more of it's borderline a Scooby-Doo caper at some points. And some people love it, some people really don't. As for me, I'm not a fan of that stuff that Scream 3 did, although I think it did do some really interesting points in pointing out the kind of Hollywood sleaze and Hollywood abuses way before it was cool. So I give it credit for that, but the sort of tonal direction, I wasn't a fan of. if Scream VII is going to kind of play to the groundlings and be closer to Scream 3, for me, it is a very bad sign. And so I'm not optimistic. I've seen Scream V about 5 times now. For Scream VI, once was enough. Once in the cinema, it was enough. And I do not know now if I am all that interested in going and seeing Scream VII. However, that is a long way off. We do not need to worry about it. I just thought you might like my take on a bit of news relevant to one of my, I guess I would say, favourite franchises. In the meantime, though, I'm going to be focusing a lot more on psychological horrors. I'm going to be doing that as my focus on my Thursday live streams, which go out at 8 PM for the month of August. We're covering psychological horrors such as Kill List, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and Das Experiment. So if you fancy that, if that is interesting to you, drop by for a Thursday live stream at 8. Keeping this short and snappy and bizarrely on topic for this channel, I'm going to leave it there, and I hope you enjoy this. If this is the kind of thing you're into, do subscribe, and you can get much more substantial takes from me and more substantial analysis of horror franchises. And also click the bell, and then you won't miss anything. I think that was all the standard shilling, so I'll leave you and hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thanks, y'all. Cheers.